Good overnight and welcome to the overnight edition of From Day One. Art Bell is ready on the back burner for tonight. However, I do have to go through just a little bit before I do bring this episode of Midnight in the Desert up. I'd been hemming and hawing about airing this particular episode for a while, and that's because the content in tonight's Midnight in the Desert is, well, subjectively questionable to say the least. Tonight's guest for Art Bell is Blanche Barton, a head individual, quote-unquote, for the Church of Satan, of all things. So, up front, the information, options, and suggestions of the folks on the program tonight are the host, guest, and callers only, and not necessarily that of From Day One. With that out of the way, here's tonight's segment of Midnight in the Desert as we march through Dominion.
From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world's time zones. I'm Art Bell, and this is Midnight in the Desert. And this is also Rump in the Storm Path. I want to notify you right away, because I don't know how much time I've got, in more ways than one. Take a look at artbell.com. I took a picture with my phone of the radar and what's approaching my little town right now. And Keith put it up, so if something happens during the show, or because of the show, you'll know what got me in more ways than one. Rules of the show are simple. No bad language. We don't allow bad language. It has no use here. Only one call per show. Beyond that, I want to thank Telos for the great sound. Before the lightning hits, Keith Rowland, my webmaster of 20 years, my producer Heather Wade, the BellGab website. I've got a message for them tonight. They complained bitterly last night. Our guest to be last night was Andrew, Andy, he wants to be called, I guess, Bashago. And he couldn't make it because his Skype was full of hum, and so we went to a backup number, and that turned out to be a cell phone. Then I said, well, how about something plugged into the wall? And said, yeah, I've got one of those with a portable thing, but it's dead, meaning no battery power. So we had no way to do it. So the BellGab group complained bitterly, and just for them, this vaguely lovable group of lollygags, I'm going to grant your wish, and tomorrow night, Andy, if you will be here. So there you have it, rescheduled already, and he will be on a landline. So there you go, BellGabbers, your wish comes true. Stream guys who get the show to you, and lv.net who gets it to them, and our sales guy, Peter Eberhardt. And I mention this as frequently as I can. You really should contact him. We have so few commercials that, well, yours just stands out. The death toll is a couple of items here from the fiery explosions in China, as I knew it would, has now climbed to 50. 700 were injured. It was horrible, horrible. They still really don't know exactly what it was. Now, we talk about the air and the condition of the planet. You remember L.A. back when it was really smoggy? Well, it's nothing compared to China. In China, air pollution is killing 4,000 people a day. Every day. 4,000 people a day. Can you imagine that? In one of the deadliest single attacks in post-war Baghdad, a truck bomb shattered a popular fruit and vegetable market in a teeming Shiite neighborhood. 67 dead. 150 wounded. Boy. From the anomalous.com, a lucky eyewitness in Illinois got the sighting of a lifetime during a thunderstorm. Maybe I better not read this. During a thunderstorm last month when he managed to capture one of the most elusive phenomena to ever be studied. No, not a UFO. The flying object has been tentatively identified as ball lightning. Ball lightning ignores all natural rules. It ignores gravity. It ignores everything. It goes where it wants to go. It does what it wants to do. It's an interesting piece of land that I live in here in Pahrump, Nevada, South Nevada. We're about 6 miles from the California border. In fact, if you look at that picture, the blue circle up at artbell.com on the radar shot is exactly where I am. I am in that blue circle, at least for now. It's like a bad one. All right, so coming up in a moment is, and I have been sprinkling my studio, by the way, with holy water. Actually, not. A little tap water here. Came out of a hole. Born and raised in San Diego, this amazing person coming up, Blanche Barton, graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Redlands College with a degree in journalism and literature. She met Anton LaVey. I guess you know who that is, right? Most of you? She met Anton LaVey the day after the previous High Priestess left the Black House. Barton became LaVey's companion and mother of his only son. She became High Priestess of the Church of Satan, holding this title until April 30th, 2002, when she assumed the role of chair mistress of the Council of Nine. Her biography of LaVey, The Secret Life of a Satanist, the authorized biography of Anton LaVey, was originally published in 1990, and an expanded edition is available now. Blanche also wrote The Church of Satan, a history of the world's most notorious religion. All right. We're going to break here, and when we come back, Blanche will be here, unless the storm has moved in and erased me and the entire program. Anyway, take a look at the radar to give you an idea of exactly where I am, or was.
Be a sin, but I'll take your bet you're going to regret because I'm the best as ever been.
Take a on the wild side of midnight. From the Kingdom of Nye, this is Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell. Please call the show at 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952-CALL ART.
All right, here comes Blanche Barton. She is a damn high priestess. I would assume, Blanche, welcome to the program, by the way.
Ah, Mr. Art Bell, we meet at last. In a stormy desert at midnight. Best time. It's the dark of the moon, too. And the Perseid shower, I tell you, it's just kismet.
I'm old Blanche. I don't have much to lose. Anyway, welcome to the program. It's great to have you, and I assume that, you probably keep the title, much as congressmen and senators keep the title even after they've left office. You're still probably High Priestess, right?
Well, people are very respectful to me, but my title officially is the Magistra Templi Rex, which is below the current High Priestess, who is Peggy Nadramia, and doing a bang-up job of it.
Would you mind repeating that slowly?
Peter Gilmore, who's the High Priest.
Would you mind repeating that slowly, please? Your title.
Magistra Templi Rex.
Yeah,
that just means that I'm the head of the Council of Nine, and that I'm a Grand Poobah in the Church of Satan, right below the other ultimate Grand Poobahs.
Okay. Can we immediately do this and find out what is the difference, if any, between Satan and the devil? Any difference?
I would use them both interchangeably. I think it would be important for us to start our conversation with you understanding that we use Satan, the devil, Lucifer as a metaphor. We don't worship a guy with horns and a pitchfork. We don't believe that such a being exists. We don't believe that God or the devil or hell or heaven exist. It's all within us. We own our own destinies. We are our own gods. We're self-deifying. And we're responsible for our own happiness and our own success and our own failures. And to make it short and sweet, life is short. Yeah. And there's no reliable evidence that there's anything beyond this life. Mm-hmm. So you'd better make this life count and enjoy it while you can. So
okay, Blanche. Well, then here comes a big question.
All right.
If all of that is so, then why would you even bother to have a church with his name?
That is a very good question.
And
Anton LaVey was asked that very question when he started the Church of Satan. And people said, if you would just call it something else, if you called it humanism. He talks about this in the Satanic Bible, which he published in 1969. If you called it humanism or even Typhonianism or something, maybe you'd get more followers. But his point was that he didn't want more followers. The point of calling it Satanism is there's always a Satan. In every culture, there's always the accuser. There's always the other. There's always the one outside. And he's the scapegoat. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous to have scapegoats. Christianity has scapegoats. Mm-hmm. Muslim beliefs have scapegoats. And to demonize others, when you say, I'm a good guy, and those people over there are bad guys, we can kill them, we can shoot them, we can mm-hmm. torture them mm-hmm. because they're the bad guys. And you know that Satan is evil, right? Because you've been told that all your life.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
But what else? This is a word that you've been programmed to be afraid of. So what else have you been programmed to be afraid of? Liberal?
Quite a bit.
Conservative? Abortion? How are you being manipulated by politicians and people who want to take your money? So that's the point of calling it Satanism, is don't believe the stuff that's being fed you.
Donald Trump scares me a little.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah, that's why we're here. That's why you need Satanists right now, because the political season is kicking off, and look at what you have to choose from. We're not just about anti-Christianity or anti-theism. That's a very big part of what we are, but anything that's a sacred cow has to be examined and challenged. Whenever you see broad generalizations or scapegoating or ad hominem attacks instead of actual arguments on important issues,
right.
You were talking about we've got serious environmental problems right now. We've got serious economic problems. And what are we doing? We're killing each other over phantoms, over lies. And that's not how we bring things together to save our planet right now. And that's what we're all about.
All right. Let's get into this. Over lies. That's a very broad brushstroke right across all of religion, from God to the devil. To Satan,
true.
Right?
True. Yeah, well, the point is that we do enter the ritual chamber. We have lesser magic, greater magic that we indulge in as a part of poetic nature in humans, but we do it consciously. We go into what we call the intellectual decompression chamber. We put on our robes and we call forth the icons that we find bring us power within ourselves, but we know that we're calling forth the power within ourselves, but we're using the poetic metaphors to reach places, that part of the human brain that we don't quite understand, that a lot of your other people that are on your show try to understand more, consciousness and the powers of the human brain and human potential. We do it based first and foremost on reasonableness and rationality. Then we add in the more metaphysical explorations, or if we don't want to, it's not necessary to do that as a Satanist. But if you want to play with the poetics of it, then that's okay too. But we don't build our foundation on sand. And that's what most religions do. They build them on sand, and they lead to blindness and prejudice, and they impose ignorance on their children and a distrust of science. And that's not the best of what human beings can be.
Well, what you preach is all good stuff. The pulpit from which, the position from which you preach, perhaps calls into question, many people call, the whole thing is called into question, frankly. Satan and the word, you're right, the devil, Satan, whatever, it scares the hell out of people. And I guess that's exactly what it's intended to do.
And that sort of surprises me because we've been around for 50 years. We've been saying the same stuff for the last 50 years.
And people don't listen.
It shows that every culture and everybody still needs the devil. They still need the other guys. They still need the bad guys, the evil ones, the outsiders. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. As far as we're concerned, we're in pretty good company. Most of the people that have, are the best thinkers, the most brilliant, innovative thinkers are generally labeled as heretics. So, why not take pride in that?
You're obviously a clear thinker. Tell me about Anton.
He was a brilliant man. He was far ahead of his time. He started out interested in magic, but he also had a wonderful skill with music. So he played the oboe, and keyboards were his real love. And he became a hypnotist. He worked in a carnival. He worked in the circus. He was a police photographer.
Wow. And
out of all of those roles, he saw human tragedy and human foibles up close and personal. He saw people sneaking in to look at the burlesque girls, in the carnival, and then sneaking across on Sunday to go with their families to see the tent show revivalists and, cleanse their souls of all their wicked thoughts.
That's right. All right. So, let me go back. You said he began with magic. Is magic real?
Well, I believe that magic I can only answer that for myself. You have to answer that for yourself.
Well, you said Anton began with magic.
Well, he began with an interest in magic and the supernatural. And he did. He checked out as many people as he thought might have a gateway into other worlds, other ways of being. Madame Blavatsky or Aleister Crowley. And they were all so dry and boring and sad and obfuscating. He just wanted the real deal. And I think people are attracted to his philosophy. One of the reasons that they're attracted to his philosophy is because he doesn't dance around. He says what he means what he says. He says, this is how I do what I do. Go in the ritual chamber, try it. If it works for you, great. Try these methods that I wrote in The Satanic Witch about basic psychology, reading people, cold readings that he learned in the carnival, the whole process of looking at nonverbal cues, and make it work for you.
Yes, but those are all tricks. And what I'm asking is, did he find the real thing, or did he practice when he found the real thing?
Well, certainly he did. Certainly he did.
Okay, so magic is real.
Yes. I have experienced magical consequences of what I've done in the ritual chamber. As I say, though, that doesn't mean that if you go into the ritual chamber and you do exactly what I did,
right,
it may not work for you. Because, to be honest, now this is just me speculating. This isn't Church of Satan policy. But it's almost as if everybody has a different frequency,
Right.
And Anton talked about this when he was playing music for animals in the circus. He said, you don't play the same song for an elephant as you do for a tiger, because they have different rhythms, they have different moods. And I think certain people are just attracted to the satanic mythos. We're attracted to the anti-hero, like Lord Byron, with the Miltonian anti-hero, the light bearer, Lucifer. Or Prometheus, for example, who risked the wrath of the gods in order to bring the fire of wisdom and intellect and creativity to human beings, and he was punished for it. Or the ultimate, of course, in the Garden of Eden, the serpent, tempting with the apple of knowledge from the tree of knowledge. All these metaphors are the same. And these are things that inspire me. Religion presents you with metaphors and myths, stories that codify and strengthen you. They're almost like a like a group art project to me, because they communicate what is important to a given society, what you hold dear, what rituals you find important, and what those ideals are. So my ideal is not some guy hanging on a cross. I'm sorry, when my back is up against the wall, I want a dynamic, life-affirming, poetic image of Satan who is the ultimate anti-hero.
And actually, Anton, when you look at him, certainly carried some of those physical characteristics, didn't he?
Oh, he certainly did. Yes, he certainly did, and he emphasized them. True to lesser magical ability, he saw what worked best for him, and he saw the look that he could present, and that fit, and he used it.
Okay, pinned to the wall, you admit magic is or can be real. If magic is real, then the supernatural is real, right?
Yes.
That's a pretty grudging yes.
Well, you're leading me down to a certain conclusion, and I want to tell you that what we do in the ritual chamber is like a laboratory. I don't think enough has been understood yet about, and again, this gets back to the other guests that you've had. I mean, even like Dean Radin, The Conscious Universe, or
oh, you are a listener, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, exactly. Or what is it? The Field, McTaggart.
Yes.
There's a lot that we do not understand about the interactions of time, space, matter. We're sort of nibbling around the edges, and we now understand that true to long history of witchcraft, that blood, semen, all the body fluids and hair that are used traditionally in magic, that now, lo and behold, contains people's DNA. So it is a direct link to an individual. When the witches started doing that, including blood and hair and stuff in their cells, millennia ago,
I'd never argue with this. No, you're dead right. We are little snowflakes, and our DNA is definitely us. And so you're right. Hair, blood, semen, bodily fluids, it's all the individual us. So if that is used in the right way by the right person, there is magic.
With the right intent. There, again, Anton LaVey lays it out very clearly in the Satanic Bible. There are certain elements that need to be addressed, including imagery, and there's also the balance factor. He includes that very, very important element because he says that you need to be aware of who you are and what potency you have. Mm-hmm. If you're a 25-watt person, you shouldn't, and you're sexually attracted to a 100-watt woman or man, yes. Maybe you should set your sights a little lower than trying to attract that particular person, to start out.
Interesting. But again, I'm going to keep going down this road as far as I can take you. And I will ask, is it possible to use a person's essence, bodily fluids, whatever, essence, in a positive way for them, as well as a negative way for them?
Absolutely. We have 3 basic rituals. We have lust, compassion, and destruction. So the point of going into the ritual chamber in the first place is not primarily to move the universe in the way you want it to. I mean, that's of course good as a side effect, but it's a psychodrama. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
Okay. So someone at work is really working against you. Someone is telling the boss lies about you. They're making you look bad. They're hiding your materials. They're really going out of their way to hurt you.
Yes.
So you go into you're really frustrated. You're thinking about this person all the time. You can't eat. You can't sleep. You're really angry and you feel impotent. So you go into the ritual chamber. You do a destruction ritual. You concentrate on this person and you wish them all the bad things to happen to them and you let it go. You let all of it go. You build up all of that energy and like a good orgasm, you just flow out. It goes out into the universe. And then you let go of the rope. It's done. As far as you're concerned, it is done. It's a done deal.
As far as you're concerned.
You've spoken to the universe. It's going to happen. Whatever's supposed to happen will happen. So next week, you go into work, and this schmo has been promoted and moved to Hawaii. So did your curse work? Well, you don't have to deal with him anymore, do you? So, and maybe he'll get caught in a wonderful storm in Hawaii, and maybe his life will be.
So maybe you go in next week, and he was hit by a Mack truck, now has about 35 broken bones, and is in traction in the hospital.
There you go. You know, that's the way it goes.
Yes. Well, I love the fact that you can bring up the rosiest metaphor possible when discussing somebody you don't like.
Well, you could have asked me about a lust ritual. You want to talk about that?
We'll get to that, sure. You are, I don't know if you want to know, you're an attorney, right?
No.
You're not an attorney? Well,
No.
You certainly sound like one.
Well, I argue a lot. Thank you. That's
I bet you do. I bet you do. Okay, this must be asked. There are many who believe that Anton LaVey actually did conjure up the devil. What do you know about that?
Well, I would say yes, absolutely.
You would?
If you're talking about the metaphorical devil, I mean, he unleashed, 50 years ago, he unleashed this power of all the people that now call themselves Satanists. And we are doing fabulous things, wonderful things in publishing. We have a lot of people in military. We have people making art, tattoos, lawyers, teachers, all sorts of people doing amazing, wonderful things. And that was, there'd never really been an actual calling forth of the devil and giving him his due the way that Anton LaVey did. There'd been, before there'd been sort of prankish ceremonies, the Hellfire Clubs and references to the devil and heretics and stuff. But there hadn't been people stepping forward and pridefully, purposefully taking the name of Satan and saying, this is how we define Satan. This is what he represents for us, and move over because we're living life and we're having a great time.
All right, hold it right there. We're at a break point. Relax. You've got several minutes. This is Midnight in the Desert. I'm Art Bell.
Wanna take a ride? Exclusively on the Dark Matter Digital Network. This is Midnight in the Desert with your host, Art Bell. To call Art, please dial 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952-CALL-ART.
How many of you feel your soul seeping from your body already? Blanche Martin is my guest. She was actually the High Priestess of the Church of Satan, and is chair mistress of the Council of Nine. And we have talked of interesting things: humanism, Satanism, and magic. Now, I do have a little bit of I don't want to say problem, interest, I guess I would say. If you pin down Blanche, magic is real. And she described something, frankly, that could have easily been described by Dr. Evelyn Paglini. Now, Blanche, have you been a listener long enough to have heard Evelyn Paglini on the program?
I should have. I'm sure there are a lot of Satanists out there that would, like to slap me about the head and shoulders for not knowing who that is.
She's a witch.
Oh, okay.
And she has described spells going after people like you described, the disgruntled worker, the one unhappy with, and how to do that, how to work spells for passion. You brought that up earlier. In other words, you two talk very much alike. You mentioned Satan, and of course you're involved in the Church of. But other than that, you just frankly sound a lot alike. So obviously you didn't hear her, because I promise you she's passed on, you would have remembered. but choose a witch.
Yeah, I probably would. That they use a lot of the same. I mean, the horned god is what they call the masculine figure, witches and Wiccans, essentially. I call myself a witch. I'm a satanic witch. So we use a lot of the techniques. We use lesser magic, which is manipulative magic to get what we want on a day-to-day basis. Then we use greater magic, which is in the ritual chamber. But I think where a lot of people part company that are interested in magic part company with Wicca or witchcraft as it is now portrayed. Now they're moving a little bit away from this, but they get all squeamish about the word Satan. They want to use the tools, but they don't want to align themselves with the bad guy. And if you're going to use the tools, then our thought is you should give the credit where the credit's due. She was not
a Wiccan. She described herself as a spiritual warrior.
Okay, well, that's good. When a lot of people that talk that kind of talk and they're not Satanists, I don't understand why they're not a Satanist. It seems like a logical step to me. I know a lot of in the 60s there was a group, calling themselves WITCH. And they were essentially militant feminists that were using the metaphors of being witches and being evil and being ugly and empowering themselves, like the word queer, kind of giving themselves that life and that strength by calling themselves witches. And, as a Satanist, I think it's a little bit short of the mark. If you're going that far and you don't align yourself with, because we call ourselves Satanists for a lot of different reasons, as I've already explained, because most of the great thinkers, including and up to Copernicus, Galileo, and more recent, people have always been called heretics and blasphemers. And so why don't you pridefully say, yes, I align myself with all that you consider evil, and I go to those dark places. I mean, I consider you a fellow traveler. You go to those dark places too, and you force people to expand their paradigms. You bring in speculation and provocation, and you make people, you say, okay, here it is. You think about this. I'm forcing you to confront this, and you think about it. You can either reject it and say it doesn't exist, or you can try to expand your consciousness to include this. That's what a good scientist does.
I think that it does exist. I think magic actually does exist. I think that many things that we discuss in the paranormal world do exist. And what I don't understand is, if you feel the same way, and I know you do, how can that not lead you to a curiosity about a maker, a creator, and Satan, all of those things being possible?
Well, that does not necessarily follow for me, because the way
I mean, you're going down that road. How can you not continue down that road to the ultimate possible conclusion?
Well, I don't need a maker. I have evolution. I have reason. I have rationality. I don't need a God that created me. If he did, he's an absentee landlord. And I've talked to people about this before too. I can't force myself to believe in a God that I don't believe exists. I can't force myself to believe that some guy 2,000 years ago in the Middle East dying, if he did live, if he was an individual and he wasn't just a compilation of a bunch of supposed fulfillment of Jewish prophecy, I can't believe that he has any bearing on my life as I live and breathe today. I'm the one who controls what I'm doing now. And if I really tried to believe in a God that was omnipotent and omniscient, and I could pray to, and he would pay attention to me, each little sparrow and each little butterfly and each little, grain of sand in the cosmos he cares about. Okay, so there's such a being. How does he let happen what he lets happen? How can the fighting continue? How can all of these bad things? And of course they say Satan. Okay.
Well, no. They or me just might say free will.
But let me continue just a minute more.
Sure. Go ahead.
It would create such frustration and anger in me to believe in that kind of God. If I tried to, and I really tried to pray, and I really tried to understand, I would be homicidal, because I could not reconcile why this being who supposedly loves me would threaten me and manipulate me in such a petulant, petty way that I have to bow down and worship him and do what he tells me to do, or he'll throw me into a fiery pit for all eternity. I mean, what kind of love is that? And then, I kind of agree with a lot of that. I really do. But what about the whole concept of an original creator and then free will? In other words, we're down here and left to do what we're going to do, and our ultimate, up or downville depends on how we do. Okay, so my free will tells me that I'm a representative of Satan, because if that God created me with a brain, he wants me to have a scientific mind, a rational mind. He wants me to challenge. He wants me to be against self-deceit. And he doesn't want me to bow down and worship him. So I'm doing my job. Well, I'm not killing anybody. I'm not stealing from anybody. I have a very sound base of ethics that I move from. I don't need a God who's going to threaten me or strong-arm me so that I'll do the right thing. I do it because I live in a society where it's expected of me, and I want the same respect from my other fellow creatures. And so that's the contract. That's the social contract, like Rousseau talked about. I don't hurt you. You don't hurt me. I don't need a God to tell me to do that.
Okay, what has Satan done for you that God has not?
He's freed my mind. He's freed my will. He's inspired me. He's strengthened me. He is a guide for me in my life. The whole anti-heroic Miltonian attitude of even when your back is up against the wall, when you don't have anything else in you, even when you've been demonized and put upon and attacked mercilessly by the majority, you still are prideful and defiant and creative and driven. And that's where Satan leads me.
All right. Earlier I asked you if he conjured up the devil, and you responded that yes, he did.
In my mind, he has let loose the gates of hell. There's a whole generation, 2 generations now, of people applying Satanism every day of their lives. And one of the reasons why I'm on your show is, well, 3 reasons. One, because you've got a wonderful show, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be on your show. But also, people are Satanists all around the world now. It's a very popular philosophy, but a lot of times you don't even know when there's a Satanist working next to you, or teaching your children, or babysitting your parents, or you don't know that they're Satanists because they don't. It's not necessary for you to disclose that you're a Satanist. In our version of the world, if it does you no good to expose yourself, then don't do it. People are confused. They don't understand it. But I want people to know that if you find out that your coworker is a Satanist, that there's nothing for you to fear or get freaked out about. These are our ethics. These are our attitudes. These are our habits. We stick to our own most of the time. We keep our nose out of your business. As long as you don't try preaching to me, I'm not going to preach to you. You're not going to find Satanists on the street corners handing out pamphlets or knocking on your door and waking you up at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday or Sunday.
Good.
We figure we want the information to be out there. That's what the Church of Satan is here for, is to continue to codify and clarify what Anton LaVey said, keep his ideas pure, blending the poetic and the rational parts of human beings. And if you're interested in it, you will seek us out and you'll find out if it's the right thing. If it's not for you, that's fine. But if you know of a Satanist, I don't want you to overreact and say, oh, yeah, I want you to understand and be able to have an intelligent conversation with them.
Just to be clear, your relationship with Anton LaVey was?
It started out, I was working in in the office in San Francisco along with other people. And as we as I began to know him, I began taking notes on. He was an amazing raconteur. He'd tell jokes. He'd tell these stories about his life and about the people that he'd known, and his lion and his leopard, and people that he'd known on the police force would come by, and he'd talk with them. And I had extraordinary access. And I had a pencil and a tablet, and I started writing down some of these stories and some of the stuff that he was talking about, because I knew that he was an important historical man. He will be remembered, many, many years from now. And what he was saying needed to be written down. So I wrote the biography, and we became more intimate. Our relationship changed, and that's why the new Secret Life of a Satanist is, the last few chapters are materially different than the first few chapters. The last chapters are much more, I hope I don't become too maudlin, or I hope I don't break down the image of who he was, but it's much more intimate portrait of him as a man, and what he struggled through in the last years of his life, and how productive he was at the same time. And so I want people to know the strength that he had, because he was undergoing physical challenges as well as the satanic panic and legal challenges, and he survived. He was strong, and right up until the end.
Were they coming after him legally because of what he said he was?
No, because of personal reasons. But of course, you remember the satanic panic of the mid 80s to the 90s. Early 90s, a lot of people may not remember, but it was an insane period of time. I mean, we had Geraldo and Sally Jesse Raphael and Oprah Winfrey with these people who were claiming to have been molested as children in satanic sacrifices, and baby breeders, and they tore up a whole, well, you know what happened in Manhattan Beach with the preschool.
Yes.
And the FBI finally did a thorough search of everything and said there is no international satanic conspiracy. But this was only after at least 2 documents were introduced into state legislation to ban the practice of Satanism as a religion. They, not Judaism, not Church of Christ, Satanism, which is a recognized religion in this country, recognized by in the Chaplain's Guide to the Military Services, and they wanted to ban it as practice, and that's scary.
It never, of course, would have held up. Never.
No, of course not. And there's a lot of weird stuff introduced into state legislature, but the fact that they felt that they could have the impetus to, the backing to introduce it, was pretty scary. It didn't go anywhere, but still.
I guess it was scary, to be sure. I mean, it's like the communist purge way back, right? Well,
and people were, their lives were broken. They got fired from their jobs. They were going through divorces, and people lost their children. They had child protective custody coming in and taking their children away, just on accusations. And finally, I think the court system and the insurance companies got tired of paying these bills for these recovered memories and these supposed counselors that were behind so much of it. But it was a time of suspicion, and the 2 elements that Dr. LaVey hated so much was that they would go on these shows, and instead of talking about real Satanism, they'd talk about some animal sacrifices or child sacrifices. And so the teenagers who were watching these shows and listening to this hysteria would say, ooh, I want to be like, a real Satanist. And so they would go off and maybe sacrifice a dog or something, and that would end up in the local papers. And Dr. LaVey loved animals. He had many, many wonderful animals that he had a great relationship with. And one of the tenets that he makes very clear in our satanic statements and in the Satanic Bible is you would not hurt an animal or a child, because they're the most natural magicians. And instead of, waving the Satanic Bible around in disgust and saying, ooh, isn't this awful, they wouldn't read the book, and they wouldn't tell people that's what Satanism really represented. And he said, all of these animals, if there are animals being hurt or killed, in this fashion because of, they think that that's what real Satanists do. These animals should be placed on Oprah Winfrey's and Geraldo Rivera's doorsteps because they're the ones that are doing it, not us. They're the ones that are leading these people to do this. And he felt very sad about that aspect of it.
I once had a young lady on my show whose name was Patsy.
Mm.
She had devoted her life to the devil, to Satan, and she said that she would ensure that her, I think it was daughter, son, rather, would be taken by the devil, as well as herself. Now, she wasn't just a caller. She began as a caller, and I went on to interview her in depth. But this, I'm telling you right now, this gal named Patsy meant what she said. Now, I understand that that is not what you've told us about tonight, but how many Patsies are out there?
Well, there are people that use any number of contexts for their disturbances. They create fantasies for what, I'm not a psychoanalyst and I haven't talked to her. I don't know about her specifically, but, I'm not qualified to pass judgment on her particular diagnosis, but I know people do a lot who want attention, and who, they may feel even that they have a real pain or they have real memories or something, but usually it can be traced to something very specific, and it's a context that they need to put their pain in, and they need a counselor that can actually help them not feed their fantasies, but actually help them move away from their fantasies into a productive life.
With what you've said, and I've listened to what you've said very carefully, hold tight, we're at this another break point. It's very difficult for me to distinguish between a fact and fantasy here. Magic is real, but the devil or Satan isn't. I'm Art Bell.
Midnight in the Desert via Skype worldwide. If on a computer, please be sure to use a headphone mic and call MITD 51. That's MITD 51.
All right. My guest is Blanche Barton. That's Blanche Barton, and she is the former High Priestess of the Church of Satan, as well as now the Chair Mistress of the Council of Nine. She was Anton LaVey's partner in life. I think that's probably a fair way to put it. And, of course, you also have a child now. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, again, I'm struggling a little bit with this, Blanche, because on one hand, you sort of lay out Satanism as humanism. But then on the other hand, you'll go down that highway saying, well, yes, some magic is certainly real, and much of the paranormal could be real, and certainly I've discussed a great deal of this, and that's kind of where you stop. You don't continue down that road. It seems to me once you've embraced the paranormal and the fact that real magic can be done, then you have to be looking at a power beyond human power, humanism.
Okay, let's try this. Okay. We start from the position that humans are rational animals. We're animals. That's the seventh. Our foundational document is the 9 Satanic Statement, and the seventh, if you will indulge me,
sure.
Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development has become the most vicious animal of all. And we can see what's happening because of that viciousness to animals all around the world. So selfish and short-sighted creatures. But instead of just leaving it at that, I could be an atheist or I could be a humanist, but there's a whole like half of our brain that isn't addressed by atheism or humanism, because Anton LaVey, for the first time in history, he reconciled the irreconcilable. He reconciled the poetry, the mystery, the magic of being a human being, of writing symphonies, of writing great literature, of having visions and creating great architecture and creating love, relationships, all of these fantasies that are human, that are a big part of being human. So he fed that into sort of a pomp and mystery of satanic imagery so that we can utilize all the power within us. And I don't see any irreconcilable there at all. The power does not come from an external source. It comes from me. It comes from you. It comes from the other people that are working with me for the same goals. And that is now being quantified, again, getting back to, recent books by Dean Radin and McTaggart and other people. It's now being quantified in a scientific way that there is a group effect when several people, lots of people are concentrating in the same direction at the same time. Mm-hmm. It does have a measurable effect there. And I don't understand it, and I don't pretend to understand the dynamics of it. I think that scientists will be studying it more and more, but we're storytelling creatures. That's what we do. If some alien came from another planet, imagine how weird it would look that we go to movies, that we watch these little boxes with all these stories on them, that we read these books, and they're all fantasies. They're all stories. Why do we do that? Because we're storytelling creatures, and we gain strength from these metaphors and these images and these practices of various emotions. And we like drama, we like symbols, we like passion, we like rituals and celebrations that bind us together and communicate our group values. And that's all that Satanism is, like any other religion.
I've got an atheist that I bring on the show from time to time named Matthew Alper. Very interesting guy. Maybe you heard him one time. Anyway, he wrote a book that I find fascinating, and I would like to describe to you the premise. The book is called The God Part of the Brain. And it basically, I'm not going to do it justice here, but basically it suggests that all human beings, and we include those who are found on otherwise uninhabited islands, natives that worship one thing or another, if the sun, perhaps, the moon, the trees, it doesn't matter, that human beings are programmed by something in our brain or some part of our brain that demands that we worship something, that we believe in some sort of deity greater than ourselves. And he thinks that they will eventually identify that part of the brain that causes this. I wonder how you feel about that, because it is true. If you look around the world, everybody, just about everybody, even you, worship something.
Well, that I hesitate with the word worship, except that I worship myself, but I don't worship something external. Just metaphorically, that's a poetic representation of me. That those images are a poetic projection of me. But yeah, I certainly think it's a fascinating study, the God part of the brain. I can definitely see that, because it is a near universal that people like to. And what I've credited to, and I don't think I'm alone in this, is that and maybe he even includes this part, when we're in nature, when we're trying to survive, when we were in our earliest stages, our brains were developing. Our survival depended on seeing patterns, seeing the gestalt, seeing the tiger hidden in the trees. And so we look for patterns and we try to make sense of things. That's what we do all the time. That's the scientific part of our mind, is trying to make sense. And we like things to progress in beginning, middle, end. We like things to be just. We like for good people to get rewarded and bad people to go to a bad place and get punished. We like that. So we tell stories to ourselves that that's what's really happening. So yeah, I can see that would be a very interesting study. I would like to read his book.
I thought you might. All right, so I have a computer, and I have this thing called the wormhole, and they can go to a certain place and send me a message as I'm doing a program, like right now. And before I read you anything, what would you imagine the response to your being on the program is tonight?
Oh, I think probably people are very happy to have a real Satanist telling them exactly what Satanism really is. I would imagine, in my mind, that's the way I would like it to be. They say, oh, what an interesting young woman. I really enjoy hearing what Satanism really is. And now when I find out that my boss is a Satanist, I won't be freaked out. That's probably it.
All right. Well, I would say it's more of a mixture. For example, oh my God, Art, how can you do this? How can you put on this satanic crap? Click, goodbye. That's somebody scared. And then I got from, Roman in Indio, California. Absolutely fantastic guest, Art. Very intelligent woman. Really enjoying this. So it's either love or hate, Blanche.
Yeah, I can see that. People have that reaction to the Satanic Bible. Anton LaVey said that people will pick up his book and they'll read it and they'll either say, my God, I felt this way all my life, but I didn't know what to call myself. I guess I'm a Satanist. That's exactly the way I feel. Or they, throw the book across the room in disgust. It's one way or the other. And that's fine. That's great. That's the way it should be.
All right. So then why not call yourself a humanist and avoid all of this, everything?
Because that wouldn't be it wouldn't be addressing the essential problem that Satanism, calling it Satanism, represents. Satanism isn't just atheistic; it's anti-theistic, and it's not just a matter of, oh well, okay, so that works for them. Okay, that's fine. It's not fine. People who are running our country, that are running our world. All around the world, most of them are basing their lives on irrationality and muddled thinking and scapegoating. And these people are leading us in certain directions, economically, socially, ecologically. And it's going to affect you. One way or another, it's going to affect you. And so Satanists, by nature, choose active opposition. You need something constructive for your life, not just a denial of something like atheism.
Choose active opposition. So is it called Satanism only to choose having that opposition?
I think it's to recognize that humans, I see Satan as a quintessentially human metaphor. He's the risk taker. He's the underdog. He's the one who triumphs, even though he's vilified. He's the solitary romantic figure, and it's a human. It's humans, not Jesus hanging on the cross and being nice to everybody. We've fallen from grace, both of us. Satan and humans have fallen from grace because of our self-determination and our pride. And instead of sniveling and whining, we stumble forward by our own wit and our resourcefulness, and we create whatever life we can with the people that we love and cherish.
Are there sins in Satanism?
Yes, there are actually. Strange you should ask that.
How about
Anton LaVey came up with it.
Okay, how about commandments? Commandments?
Our 9 satanic statements written published in the Satanic Bible are our codifying statements. I would say.
So you really sound like a lawyer.
You know what the final 9th satanic statement is? I think you'll enjoy it.
Oh, I'm listening.
Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he's kept it in business all these years.
Yeah, well, there is that, isn't there? It is the ultimate threat that keeps everybody in line.
Yeah, exactly. And why do you have to have a loving God that strong arms people into doing good?
Well, God, historically, has a temper. Right?
Well, but
he struck people down. He destroyed cities.
You're a kid, and you're getting shoveled this stuff from your parents. You know, they're telling you about this guy. Where does he live? I don't know. He lives in a cloud somewhere. We've got the space station up there, but they can't see him. Well, he lives more over that way. You know, I don't know what he looks like. And kids are smart. You know, they start asking questions pretty early on, and they understand when someone's avoiding the truth. And when they start feeling that mommy and daddy are not telling them the truth about this, then they start calling into question everything that mommy and daddy tells them.
Well, you are right. If you ask the wrong questions, even in Sunday school, you risk ejection.
All right, we'll have to leave Art and Blanche, I believe her name is, Barton, till tomorrow night. As always, like, share, and subscribe. Get us to the goal of 50,000 views, 1,000 subscribers. The Boxy sends us the package, and YouTube pays attention to us, starts sending us, items, people watching on the algorithms, those kind of goodies. YouTube, not YouTube, but Ibotta and CoinBase are below. Fill them out, get your $10 free, and rock and roll. And until next time, like, share, and subscribe, be kind to one another, and it's always a great new world to release the Krakens. We'll see you tomorrow as we march along here from day one. Have a great